The Dornier 17 was an enigmatic aircraft. Glazed nose, twin radial engines, very thin fuselage and a twin tail, which gave rise to its nickname of the Flying Pencil.
The Dornier 17 was considered very highly at the beginning of the Second World War because it still had high performance, but it had a very small bomb load, and it was very, very quickly overtaken by the more sophisticated German bombers of the period, such as the Heinkel 111 and the Junkers 88. But for reconnaissance duties and for the early bombing raids, it was extremely successful and had a very high performance.
This is a sales brochure for the Dornier 17 for the bomber version, Kampfflugzeug, and you can see from some of the images just how narrow the fuselage was.
The Dornier 17 cockpit was virtually all glazed, and there was a crew of 4 in there. To fly an aircraft, to navigate an aircraft, to bomb and defend must have been a very, very, very difficult target. And of course, being attacked by RAF fighters and surrounded by all that perspex didn't give you that much protection.
This is an air diagram, an instructional poster produced by the Air Ministry, showing a cutaway view of the Dornier 17Z. You can see the slim, narrow nature of the fuselage, leaving little room for any bombs, and also the quite cramped conditions in which the crew operated.
All the Dornier would carry would be defensive armament machine guns. So there would be approximately 2 at the rear of the cockpit, 2 at the front of the cockpit, and 1 underneath pointing backwards. But as the Battle of Britain developed, the German Luftwaffe would increase the number of guns because of the potency of the RAF fighters. Here we see an example of the defensive armament which would have been carried by each crew member on the Dornier 17. This is a Luger pistol. This here is a 1940s issue flare pistol carried by all Luftwaffe aircraft, Luftwaffe aircrew. It would fire off the colours of the day, series of greens and reds, which would indicate to other aircraft and indicate to people on the ground that the aircraft approaching them was friendly. The crew would have internal communication. They would also have communication to their section leader. They would fly in a specific formation, normally in an aircraft of 3. So the aircraft at the front would be the leader, and that would be the person that they would keep communicating with. What we see here are examples of the flying helmets which would have been worn by the crew in the Dornier 17. Oxygen masks and goggles are typical of the period. The aircraft was equipped with an intercom system, and what you see in the flying helmet, it would be plugged in to the intercom system. They could hear through the earphones here. What you see here is the intercom plug and the throat microphone, which would enable the crew to speak to each other and also to other members of the formation flying with them. The Dornier 17 by 1941 was obsolete. It figured in bombing raids over Russia, but really after that it was relegated to training roles.
It was a fast aircraft. Indeed, when it was used by the Germans in the Spanish Civil War, it easily evaded any Republican fighter that was put up against it. During the course of 1940, it was steadily withdrawn from frontline German units as other aircraft, more developed aircraft, took its place.
To compare the 2 aircraft, the Dornier was a medium bomber. The Defiant was a fighter. The Dornier was outmoded by the beginning of the Battle of Britain. When it originally came out, it was very effective, very fast in the mid-30s, but at the time of the Battle of Britain, it really had begun to become outmoded and superseded. The Defiant was a fighter aircraft, but it was a new concept of fighter, a turret fighter, and very quickly it became obvious that it was not the performer they hoped it would be, and in that respect, it probably mirrored the Dornier.
The question of how the Dornier 17 was considered is obviously a question with many answers. The RAF would have one opinion on that, and the Germans would have at least one from their commanders, and again one from the crew who actually had to fly it into combat. It was never intended as a bomber. It was designed as a mail plane to carry post around Germany very quickly, and it was only after it was rejected for that role that a liaison officer between the Luftwaffe and the German version of British Airways, Lufthansa, decided it might be a good idea to see if it could be turned into a bomber.
By its crews, it was liked very much. By the RAF, it was found to be an aircraft that was quite easily shot down. You see a lot of them crash landed during the Battle of Britain, so it is an aircraft that symbolised the Battle of Britain.